Hello everyone. Thank you for joining me. This presentation will describe the Building Needs Assessment report for the Griffin Memorial School that Barker Architects completed in 2021. It will look at the physical needs of the building and grounds and the constraints those put on the educational process. We will start with the enrollment projections and an analysis of the program to understand what size this building needs to be. Then we will take a close look at the building and the site of the Griffin Memorial School and the issues that it has. Finally, we will assemble our findings into a cost matrix to give us a comprehensive view of the conditions and their value. I would first like to review what we use as standards to develop the needs list. To be as fair and objective as possible, we compare the existing facility to codes and standards that are important for educational facilities. First of all, the State Department of Education has size and condition standards that all schools should adhere to. Second, existing schools need to comply with the state fire code. Some building codes may be grandfathered, but during renovations, those rules have an impact. Third, all municipal facilities need to be accessible to persons with disabilities. Lastly, the state's Department of Homeland Security published a document with design recommendations to help schools remain safe. There are other references that do not have a published standard, such as the conditions of materials. We use our experience and knowledge of their life expectancy to judge when these items need replacing. To begin, I will present a summary of the findings found in this study. The most significant deficiency is space needs. We can simply look at the portables to understand that there is currently not enough space in the existing building for all classrooms that are necessary. Additionally, some spaces within the building are too small, such as the gymnasium. One of the more concerning issues is the fact that many spaces were designed for a very different use than its current application. The nurse's office is a good example, with that space in what was originally shower rooms with little to no changes. This situation is what I call functional obsolescence. It makes delivering education more difficult and can have a dramatic effect on the quality of education and attitude of both students and teachers. The physical plant needs are significant for both the site and the building. The location of the building creates safety concerns with car and bus traffic. The building lacks a sprinkler system, which is required for a building of this size. The building generally lacks insulation, and the design and materials have stopped performing well. It is important to understand what to expect enrollments will be in the future to best assess the building's capacity to handle it. We do this through enrollment projections, where we study past enrollments and extrapolate that information to make future predictions. By looking at the historic enrollments and town births, we can see some trends starting. Birth rates across the country have declined in the last 20 years, but Litchfield's birth rates appear to be fairly steady. What is striking is that the number of kindergarten students is 5 to 12% higher than the births 5 years prior, meaning that there are a large number of people moving into the district. In fact, that trend continues, with each grade increasing on an average of around 2%. The result then is a prediction of slow and steady increase over a long period of time. The recommendation is to design for an expected enrollment of up to 100 students per grade, with the possibility of some years being slightly higher. With having the design capacity established, we can estimate the required number of teaching stations and then the total building size. First, we study the number of students per grade to estimate the number of teaching stations for each subject or program area. Then we compare this with the existing spaces to see what areas might be inadequate. What we see is that there are several areas that stand out. First, kindergarten and preschool are not in the building, but rather in portable classrooms. Next, we see that the gymnasium is roughly half the size that we would expect in a new building. Lastly, the offices and support areas are seriously lacking. What is interesting is that non-program areas or corridor or unusable space is much higher than we would expect, suggesting that the building is very inefficiently designed. Overall, it is about 24% smaller than what is needed for the design capacity that we have established. The Griffin Memorial School was built in numerous phases, growing significantly over many decades. This organic growth with no master plan has resulted in an inefficient layout. The first building on site was constructed in the 1930s and consisted of 4 classrooms in a 2-story structure. The lower level is several feet below grade. The rooms are small and have not been used for anything but storage for a long time. There is not an elevator or lift, so no area in this building is handicap accessible. The next section to be built was a U-shaped wing. It is higher in elevation than the original, but still mostly below grade. The walls are a single layer of concrete block, with the sides facing the public covered in brick. The level of quality is very low. The style of design and the fact that it is below grade creates serious problems with drainage. Overall, the age of the materials and mechanical electrical systems is archaic and in immediate need of replacement. There is a large wing of the building built in the 1970s and 1980s. At one point, this was a separate building, but later additions connected it to the original and early additions. This wing is slightly better quality construction and finishes and equipment are newer, but even then, this is at least 40 years old. There is still little to no insulation in the walls. The floor elevation is higher again than the first two wings, but the slab has no vapor barrier below it. The layout is very long and rambling and makes access and supervision very awkward. The site is probably the most problematic aspect of the conditions assessment. Some elements are too difficult or simply impossible to rectify. The building has many constraints. There is Route 3A to the south, and to the north are septic fields. On the east side, very close to the building, are property lines. Because the building floor is below grade and very close to the property line, there is limited ability to handle rainwater runoff, and much of it flows into a ditch that eventually flows to the Merrimack River, but this system has overgrown and the culverts crossing 3A are too small. The driveway is a single semicircle at the front of the building with no separation for cars and buses. As a result, buses are currently lined up in the back playground as cars queue along the driveway for student pickup. This creates a backup onto Route 3A, with cars parked on the side of the highway waiting their turn. On-site parking is limited, with lots frequently overfilling and cars again parking on the highway. The closeness of the building to Route 3A means most of the issues cannot be adequately fixed, and to that, the risk to the students is great. The site issues are not limited to the small area where Griffin Memorial School is located. If we look at the entire property, including the lower site where Griffin Memorial School is and the upper site where Litchfield Middle School is, we see that future options are very limited. There have been numerous studies looking at groundwater and wetlands of the site. 6 monitoring wells have been dug, 3 on the lower site and 3 on the upper site. The depth to groundwater in these wells is only about 1.6 to 5 feet below grade. Between the lower and upper site is an area of steep slopes that raises 35 feet in elevation. At the base of these steep slopes is a large area of wetlands with standing water much of the year. As already mentioned, access to Griffin Memorial School is dangerous due to the close proximity to Route 3A. Access to Litchfield Middle School is much safer, but through a residential neighborhood and probably not capable of handling access for 2 schools. A new access road through the steep slopes and wetlands has been considered, but considered technically infeasible due to the cost, state permitting required, and overall impact to the wetlands. What is left over for areas of new construction and or expansion is very limited. To continue using the Griffin Memorial School as an elementary school, several tasks should be completed first. These include reconfiguring driveways and parking, improving the drainage, updating aging systems and materials, and building a new addition to accommodate space currently in temporary classrooms. Specifically, here are some recommendations. Repurpose the original school for something other than education. This avoids having to install an elevator that would be expensive for the amount of usable space. Next, the early addition should be demolished and the space used to create more room near the building for things such as a drainage system, play areas, or access driveways. Next, the 1970s and 1980s wing could be renovated and reconfigured for current standards and building codes. Lastly, a new addition of approximately 36,000 square feet would be required to meet all program needs. An estimated cost for these improvements has been assembled based on previous studies, current pricing trends, and other similar projects. The costs are for comparison purposes only and are not meant to represent an actual project. For now, it is simply a tool to make a judgment on the viability of moving forward with this building. The costs are broken into categories of site, building envelope, codes, finishes, plumbing and mechanical, electrical, and an addition. These categories are further divided into tasks with costs assigned to each. The addition is the prevailing current cost of new construction and not inflated for future construction. There are additional costs not shown, such as new furniture, equipment, and fees. To be clear, this is only meant as a rough estimate to fix current deficiencies and does not bring the existing building up to new school standards. There are many options for improvements to Griffin Memorial School. It is difficult to identify one definite solution, but this study aims to make the issues obvious so that the community can make a good decision. Here are the facts. The cost of renovations to bring the facility just up to current standards would exceed the New Hampshire Department of Education cap of 60% the replacement costs for new construction. At that level, the state suggests that the district look at new construction because it is felt that it is a better investment than a major renovation. An addition about equal in size to the existing after the select demolition will be needed. This means that most of the work will already be new construction and that the existing conditions will severely limit what can be done. The location and proximity to Route 3A would not change, and the problems associated with that will continue. A certain level of dysfunction will always be part of the building due to the fact that the existing spaces were designed for a much different use many decades ago. This concludes our presentation on the Griffin Memorial School Building Needs Assessment. Thank you for listening.